Awesome. Cool. Shawn, thank you so much for joining us. We have a couple of viewing parties in Florida, New York, and the UK. So might want to keep some of it a little broad specifically. But yeah, thanks so much for joining us. Shawn is a good friend of mine. He's exited 2 YC companies. I trust him with any of my personal portfolio companies going forward. And he's done an amazing job with them. He works with a lot of the VCs in town. So he's another connector for you guys to be able to possibly make that introduction going forward later. But I will pass it off to you, Shawn, and let you take it from here.
Awesome. Thanks, Lucas. That's really kind of you. Too many kind words. So just to give you guys a little background on myself, like Lucas said, basically been a founder for a really long time. Recently sold a company in 2017. Kind of was always on the acquisition side, doing everything from the shady stuff, the not shady stuff. Spent some time at a multi-billion-dollar direct marketing firm. Now I basically run a marketing agency called Pivot CMO. We're pretty boutique. We kind of like help smaller companies, with their initial growth. Kind of what I wanted to talk about today, and Lucas has seen me give like a similar presentation before, and some of you guys might have seen this before, so apologies if it's slightly redundant. I try to add a couple of things to this one to kind of make it a little bit more interesting. But what I kind of realized over the years is there was a lot of things that I wish people told me early on when it came to marketing. I think it's really easy for VCs and for people investing and things like that to say, hey, look, you have to hit these numbers, or you got to hit this milestone in order to raise the next round, or come back to me when you hit these metrics. And you're like, well, how? And they're like, well, go talk to your customers. It's like, okay, great, sure. But this is kind of like a culmination of all the things that I've learned over the years that, again, I wish someone had told me early on. So I put together a little deck that is very simple, but it'll kind of allow us, I'm just going to put it on, very simple, but it'll kind of allow us to, go through it together. How do I share my screen, Lucas? Let's see.
Bottom. Does it navigate?
Okay. Let me see. Share. Desktop to share. All right. Can you see it, Lucas?
Yeah, I can see it.
Awesome, cool. So I'll kind of just go through this like fairly quickly, but and I'm going to be looking at the slides over here. But the first question I like to talk to people about is like, what is growth? And the answer is not that obvious. Like a lot of people think it's just getting more customers or getting more revenue, but the actual equation is number of customers you acquire minus the cost to acquire them minus the churn customers. That's your actual growth. So you should always think of your growth like as a net function of what you're doing, because if you're losing a lot more customers than you're acquiring, then you really don't have any growth. Like your revenue, your customer acquisition can be really, really great, but if you're churning, then it doesn't really matter. The next thing I'd like to talk a little bit about is like just making sure you have your key metrics and your KPIs like very identified. That's something that a lot of people don't really understand. I think it's really easy to say like, oh, it's revenue or it's users. Like, is that actually the case? Should it be, if you're an enterprise sales organization, is it number of leads? Is it number of prospects? Is it number of emails that you've sent out? Like, those are probably the better metrics for you to really anchor your growth on. The next thing I want to and I'm going to breeze through this, by the way. Lucas, are we taking questions or are we doing questions after this, or just
yeah, if you want to save a couple minutes at the end, more than welcome to.
Cool. I'm going to just breeze through this really quick. I can send the deck out afterwards, but I'll leave some time for questions. So apologies if this sounds really rushed. But buzzwords or shit marketing people say, these are things that you should really probably know before you do any sort of advertising, before you get on any ad platforms, before you talk to anybody about advertising. Really simple things, just because people in marketing tend to talk really fast. So if you don't know these things, it's really easy to waste a lot of money investing in your marketing or in your growth, and whatever the case is. Again, I'll send the slides out, and you can kind of take a look at some of these afterwards. The next thing I like to discuss a lot is modeling. And when I say modeling, I don't mean what you send over to your investors. Obviously, whatever you send over to your investors is an imaginary, overinflated model of what you think your business is like. Those decks that say that you're going to be worth like $100 million next year or something like that. The type of modeling I'm talking about is where you don't lie to yourself. it's actually where you solve for something. So you'll be solving for cost per order, for what your customer acquisition cost needs to be, what your cost of goods needs to be. Sometimes it's return on ad spend. Basically, like, this is a tool for you to understand something fundamental about your business. For most of the businesses that I've started, we almost always solve for what our customer acquisition costs need to be to justify like a certain price. Then we'll look at that and say, like, is this realistic or not? Like, for example, like if you have a product that's $20 and it costs $10 to make, and you only have $10 to acquire customers, given that company has a lot of overhead and things like that, that's probably not realistic, right? So having a model like will help tell you that, and it doesn't need to be complicated. Like, this is a really simple model that we put together for like a mobile app that we're rolling out, right? So this is the subscription price. Net income is like after what Apple takes. This is our ad spend. How much some costs us to get an order, and then what our LTV looks like, over the subsequent months, given a certain amount of churn, right? So it can be as simple as this. It can be as complicated as this one that we put together for an e-commerce product that we had. So this models on everything, like including credit card fees, shipping and handling, fulfillment, customer service, like basically everything. And then we basically solve for like, in this case, we were looking to solve for like the CPO, which is there on the top left for like a stick rate, meaning like how many months do people need to subscribe in order for like this to work out. So these are the types of models that I would typically run early on. If you're a sales organization, by the way, we like, now that we run a marketing agency, we're a sales organization. So we run similar models for, how many leads do we need to have how many emails do we need to send to get how many prospects, to get how many leads, to get how many people signed. What you'll often find is, sure, like conversion can be an issue, meaning like if you're, again, a sales organization, number of people that you get on the phone with to actually sign your contract. A lot of people think that's generally the issue, but oftentimes it's actually a top of funnel issue, meaning I'm not getting enough emails, or I'm not getting enough leads in general. So having a model like that will kind of help you determine these things. So that's typically really important. I also recommend that really early on you have a growth dashboard. We build all of our growth dashboards in Google Sheets, so it's nothing like super complicated or anything like that. Like, here's an example of one that we put together for a small business that we own. This business is based on text message marketing. So basically it's all about every day how many text messages that we send, what's the conversion of those text messages, how many times do we think that the people that we've converted will rebill in subsequent months because it's a subscription company. How many people actually rebuild based on that, so we can like model back and see where we were wrong or right, and then like just our growth overall. These are good things to have, especially like if you have investors, because you can make assumptions about your business, and then you can also show your investors like, look, this is the actual growth that's happening. It'll also help you kind of like stay realistic about your actual business day to day, right? Because typically like I sit with a lot of founders and I'm like, hey, how much money are you making? They're like, we have no idea. How much is your growth? Okay, we have no idea. So having like a dashboard early on will help you with these types of things. Kind of following up on that, analytics and tracking are really, really important. Nowadays, it's not okay to just launch an app or a website and have no tracking whatsoever. And what I mean by that is, do you actually trust your data? And there are different ways to kind of do tracking. There's the quantitative tracking method, so things like Google Analytics, mixed panel amplitude for funnel tracking, and I should have added the segment since they feed into those two things. Your Facebook pixel. Those are like more quantitative things, like how many visitors to my site, what's my conversion, how much money am I making. Then there's qualitative things like Hotjar and Intercom. Hotjar will give you like a heat map of your site, so you can see like, look, if I have a really high bounce rate on my site, where are people actually scrolling, or what are they clicking, and where are they leaving me, type of a thing. Intercom is just a really good way to interact with your customers, especially if you're an early stage startup, something really good to have, because you should always be kind of communicating with your customers. So I'll just breeze through this to kind of get that. Landing pages are also really important. They can be really simple. Like, I think people get too caught up in like trying to make the landing pages too different. Typically speaking, we actually make landing pages very similar with like minor tweaks. So these are like two landing page softwares that we like to use, but I'll give you an example of, at my last company, we had landing pages like based on our customer segment. So we had like an airport concierge business, and we understood pretty clearly that some of our customers were families, some of our customers were senior citizens. So we tailored the copy for that, right? So like, this is one landing page for seniors and elderly, right? So it's like, okay, the service is for these older people that are coming on our site. This one's like for families, so it talks about like, if you have like a crazy kid at the airport or whatever the case is, like it's tailored to them. we noticed like when we put these in, conversion just dramatically increases, right? Here's another one for business, for example. So these pages are all pretty much exactly the same, excuse me, except for like the picture and some text at the top, right? So it doesn't need to be complicated to get some landing pages out. Now, this is one thing that I think a lot of people just completely miss or completely don't understand. Especially like for us, where we deploy a lot of ad spend, you can have the best marketers in the world or best people giving you leads in the world, but if your funnel and you're tracking and if you're not optimizing your funnel, you're going to kind of like lose. I'll give you a good example of this. So this is like a site that we used to own. You'll see the top and the bottom, they're the same exact website. The only difference is, they're slightly different. The reason why we did this is the top one had a 0.01% conversion, which is really low. The bottom one had a 0.02% conversion. So because we tested, like A/B tested these pages to optimize our funnel, that doesn't seem like a lot, but that's actually a factor of 2x. So that means we have a 2x ROI on very little changes. Like they're pretty much exactly the same, right? So something to think about, something to track, because you can have dramatic differences like this, and that's really important. Here's this in action, like on another subset of something that we did. So if you look at this funnel, 83% of our customers get to step 2, and only 10% of our customers get to step 3. So we realized really quickly, okay, the issue is probably the sign up page. Why don't we just remove the sign up page? And then this is what happened, right? You have dramatically more people getting to actually initiate checkout and then actually get to purchase, right? So think about it. Like, I've done no ad buying, I've done nothing to my audiences or anything like that. It's the same exact traffic. The only difference is I took out one step and I have dramatically more percent of people purchasing. So, this is probably one of the highest leverage things that you can do in your business. And if you're not tracking something like this and Mixpound or something like that, you're probably really losing out. The next thing I'll say is email marketing is really, really important. It's the most inexpensive, it's basically free form of marketing that you can do. What I mean by this is not like mass scraping sites and like emailing people, like spam emailing people. Like, you can do that too, and that's totally fine. But more of what I'm talking about is like drip campaigns and things like that. So after you acquire an email, whether it's through like a pop-up box or like someone went through your checkout and didn't complete it, whatever the case is, you should drop them into an email funnel that goes, maybe even 2 months out. As many emails as you can put in, the better. That'll help you kind of like just capture a lot of the customers that kind of have fell through. A good example of this is one of our clients, for example. They do about $130,000 in revenue a month right now. Of that, about $35,000 comes from these automated emails. So before the automated emails, they're making less than $100K a month. They add these emails, they automatically recapture customers that they've already paid for that would have otherwise fell through, right? I didn't include this in the slides here, but one other thing to think about is, like, if you're running some sort of e-commerce site or something like that, there are a lot of customers that are probably in your database that haven't bought in a while. So emailing pretty aggressively is really helpful. A lot of the email softwares nowadays have conditional triggers, like don't email if they've received an email in the past week, or don't email if they've bought recently, or something like that. It's okay to spam people that aren't buying things. Like, why would you not email people that haven't bought things from you lately? So that's something to think about, because the argument that we always get is like, oh, I don't want to like spam my core customers, and the answer is you don't have to. I think customers that don't have any, or clients that don't have any budget for ads, we always tell them, like, look, if you have 5,000 emails in your database, like, why aren't you emailing these guys every single day, right? It takes 20 minutes to put together an email, and it's, like I said, basically free. So something to think about there. Influencers, I'm in LA, so everybody's trying to get influencers, Instagram, whatever nowadays. Beware of them. We've just had like a not a great chance with these guys. I think it's okay if you have like a really good affiliate influencer program. You have like, and this depends on the industry, by the way. Like, fitness is a really good industry where you can bring on like some really core athletes, incentivize to like share your link and things like that. But it should be very incentives based. You shouldn't give up equity for influencers. I'll give you a good example. We talked to a company recently that brought in Kyler as their influencer, and the way they used her is they said, okay, look, we're going to pay you a lump sum of money, and we'll give you like a percent of sales that come through your link, and surprise, like almost no sales come through her link. But really what they wanted is they wanted her picture. They now use her picture for like, Sephora pop outs, Ulta pop outs, things like that. but they're never going to get for equity because beyond the photo shoot, like she's basically useless, right? So just be careful when it comes to influencers because it's a very spiky, non-scalable strategy unless you're using it for like to augment other channels, like new influencers picture on ads or in a store or something like that. So there's that. SEO. So a lot of small companies always say like, look, if we could just conquer SEO, then we get all this free organic traffic and we don't have to pay for anything. It's really great. The problem with that is it's not that easy. It takes months to work out. You need thousands of pages that you need to generate. Generally, we suggest companies do this programmatically. You got to go for like long tail terms. Like there's just a lot of things here that you need to do. So it's important that you don't have stress on SEO. These are a couple sites that do it really well. I have a friend that founded this site and they did long tail SEO. They generated 250,000 pages in their first week of launching, basically all about like different cars and things like that. And basically they were able to rank for some of them, and that's why they're successful. But unless you're able to generate tens of thousands of pages, like SEO is probably not for you, at least in the beginning. So content is really, really important. Now, content comes in the form of many things. Like I'm not just talking about putting blog posts out. You can put blog posts out on Medium and things like that. I mean, I think having email content that's going out, like I said, emailing your users every single day is really, really important. Those are the types of content things I'm talking about. Like, but I think if you're going to put content out, the key is consistency. So, the content should be about things your customers actually want. It shouldn't just be spam about how you should buy your product. It should be very educational, things that you would actually want to read if you're reading. And again, like when I say scalable and relevant, I mean like really consistent. Like if you can't just expect to you can't decide this week to put out 5 articles or 5 pieces of, content, and that's going to help your business for the rest forever. You really need to adopt the cadence of like, okay, I'm going to do 2 a week, and you actually do 2 a week, because the thing with content is you don't really know it's going to hit until it hits. So the more, the better. Affiliates is another really big thing that I would watch out for. Affiliates in the form of influencers are typically okay, but there are rules to kind of doing it. It can be addicting, so don't become a heroin addict, as I say. And don't fuck up your brand, because you're basically putting it in the hands of someone else to talk about. I'll give you a good example. In early 2000s, I was doing affiliate marketing, where I would basically take somebody's like affiliate link and I would just spam it all over these sites, bunch of forums, porn sites, like wherever I could get cheap clicks. So someone would just click on my link and I would get paid out for it. So a lot of affiliates don't give a shit about your brand. So just be really, really careful. And keep in mind that affiliates tend to go away. If you have a really good affiliate offer, people are going to bid against each other, and eventually it's just going to go away. Ad buying is really great. I love ad buying. We do a lot of ad buying here. It's typically the most scalable, at least in the short term, and it's very trackable. But before you do any sort of ad buying, make sure your analytics are set up. Super, super important. If you can't track the money that's going out, you're going to screw yourself over. You should know your metrics really well. Like what is success for you? I'll give you a good example of like sales organizations really screwing this up is they'll go out, they'll buy a bunch of leads. They don't really know what makes a lead a quality lead. And then, they all end up not being quality because they're not asking the right questions and they don't know how to qualify their leads. Scale slowly. So I was talking to a company yesterday where they were spending $15,000 a month on Facebook. And they thought it was working. So they scaled 50,000 a week later. And they ended up burning $50,000 because they didn't realize that their lead quality was actually terrible. Look at a lot of ad channels. I mean, Facebook and Google are typically like the biggest ones, and they typically work well for most people. But look at Pinterest, look at Quora, look at Reddit, look at LinkedIn. Be really concrete about your testing in the sense that put a budget behind it, be really strict about it, and make sure that it's enough budget. The last thing you want to do is kind of spend $300 and be like, oh, it wasn't enough, or it's too much, and I don't want to spend it anymore because I don't have any budget for it, or something like that. Test multiple creatives and copies is really important because your messaging isn't always right. So, just test multiple. The last thing I'll say here that has come up recently is it's okay to do some testing by yourself, but understand that if you've never run ads before, when you do testing by yourself, you're going to light your initial budget on fire. That's kind of okay because you're learning. So it's kind of like the cost of learning. But if you're not comfortable lighting your initial capital that you're going to invest into it on fire, seek some professional help, get some coaching, or something like that. If you need, ad buying is typically a binary outcome. Either it's going to work or it's not going to work. So you work with a professional and to deploy your ad spend if that's going to be the case. So I'll get to like kind of this growth hacking which is what this is titled. I kind of wanted to give you all the background because those are the things that are more scalable and the things that you're going to have to do all day anyways. Growth hacking is interesting. It means a lot of things and means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. The first thing I'll say is don't become a crack addict, in the sense that it can be really addicting. You find like one hack that's working really, really well. It's probably going to eventually go away. So it's no sustainable way to run a business. That being said, all the best businesses out there have all growth hacked their way to success. Stripe, Airbnb, Dropbox, talk to most of the founders, and they've all done some pretty shady shit to get their business off the ground, but that's pretty typical of most businesses. We've done a lot of shady shit. I'll talk to you a little bit about like the most classic cases out there. Like when Airbnb started, you guys have probably seen this, but they said, okay, like we don't have any rentals and we don't have any traffic for people to get our rentals when we have them. So let's just go on Craigslist. Let's scrape every single rental property on there. We'll put it on our site, and then and then we'll repost it back onto Craigslist saying that we have this available. Any leads that come to Airbnb will then go back and contact the person whose original listing it was and say, hey, we have tenants for you, but you have to pay us a fee, right? So that's a pretty good platform hack. Hotmail used to do something where Hotmail used to be the only email platform out there, and they forced you to have like sent by Hotmail as your signature. Like similar to like if you have an iPad, it says like sent on my iPhone or sent on my iPad or something like that. So those are some of the more classic hacks. Some of the more hacks that we do today is like just stealing audience data. So I'll give you an example. We had a real estate site, so we went out and we scraped, tens of thousands of real estate agent email addresses. We use them for lookalike audiences in Facebook, or we just email them directly. You can go scrape LinkedIn for email addresses for people that are in your industry, which typically works really well for sales organizations. Text messaging is like a really good new hack that we've seen. You got to be a little bit careful because there are some laws around it, but typically speaking, text message is a really good way to do retargeting, or just send spam in general. So those are the types of growth hacks that I would like think about. Some other ones are like just automating as much of the process as possible. So automating your emails that go out, sending a lot of email because it's free. Like, why would you not do it? You are going to hit some spam blocks, so just be really careful. These are the types of things that big companies aren't doing, and that's what's going to really allow you to win at the end of the day. So that's all I had kind of prepped in the form of a presentation. I typically like to leave some time at the end just for questions. So if anybody has any questions, now is kind of the time about anything I talked about, or if you want to talk about something in your business specifically, I'm happy to walk through it. That typically helps a lot of the other companies that are in the group as well. So any questions I can answer?
There's one question right now. Is there a general checklist for all these things or more to keep in mind?
Yeah, I mean, I think here's the shitty answer and here's the good answer. The shitty answer is like, no, it depends business to business. But I mean, in general, the checklist in my head is analytics and tracking first. Like, make sure you have that first. The second thing I would say is when you think about marketing strategy, I always recommend you open like a Google Doc or Google Sheets or whatever, and like lay out all the tests that you have in one column. So like one test could be your Facebook ads, one test Google ads, one could be email, one could be emailing every single person that's written a news article about something in your industry or something like that. Like, just sit down with your co-founders and for 15 minutes and just do this massive brainstorm. That's one column. The second column should be how much time it's going to take. The third column should be how much money it's going to cost you. The fourth column should be based on the first two things. What's the priority, right? If it's going to take you 1 hour, then just get it done like today. Then you'll knock that one out, and if it works, great, double down. If it doesn't, then fuck it, move on to the next one, right? So that's typically how I would think about it. Like, I don't think there's a checklist in terms of, hey, you should try Facebook and then you should try this or anything like that. You should come up with this checklist and then like kind of go down it. But I think having analytics and email as the core of your initial strategy is like really good. So yeah.
Nice. Awesome. Do you have any B2B enterprise sales hacks?
Yes, scrape LinkedIn. There are a lot of LinkedIn scrapers out there where you can just scrape for emails. I told Lucas to do this. I think he's doing it. But you should, LinkedIn Sales Navigator, there's a 30-day free trial. Go get the free trial. They have really good targeting. So you could say like, we had a company recently that said, we only want to work with companies that do video that are of, 100 to 500 employees, because, our product is $10,000 a month. So if you're under 100 employees, the product's $50,000 a month. So if you're under 100 employees, you can't afford it. Then there's a scraper tool out there that will grab you everyone with a certain title, because, for them, they only wanted to talk to the CTOs. So, you grab all the CTOs and it'll actually give you their email. So scrape LinkedIn, and then throw these people through like an email drip campaign would be my suggestion for B2B. The other thing is, if you have a little bit of budget, do Facebook lead form ads. They're cheap and they're fucking great, to get leads. But I think getting leads isn't enough. Like, you need to have a really good sales workflow. A lot of our clients are having that issue now, where they have too many leads and they don't know how to close any of them. So we're now like actually advising them on how to actually close their sales. So, just think about that.
Nice. Yeah, the LinkedIn thing does work. Initially, when it's just you and your co-founder, do you outsource the creation of ads or making of emails?
Yes. Well, okay. We never did it because we always ran our ads and we did emails, but yeah, we did. And I think when you're hiring somebody outside, it's really easy. And I used to put this in my presentation before I owned an agency, to like beware of agencies. But when you bring someone from outside, okay, number one, talk to like 4 different firms. Okay. Now here's the issue with bringing on agencies. The sales guy you talk to is not the actual guy that's going to be doing your marketing. Okay. It's always going to be someone else. So fuck the sales guy, go talk to the guy that's actually you're going to have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. Because technically you're actually paying that person, not the salesperson. Okay. The salesperson is paid to be charming. So talk to the person that you're talking to every single day, and do that for like 3 or 4 companies, right? Like, you should treat it as an interview, because just because they have case studies, just because they look really good, if they're hard to talk to, then fuck them, move on. So outsourcing is totally okay. I actually, if you don't know any ad buying, if you have some budget for it, I would recommend outsourcing early on, just because it's really easy to blow like a couple grand really quick if you don't know what you're doing. Where if you pay a little bit extra, you can have like a really good binary answer whether it's going to work or not.
Nice. Cool. Final
By
question.
the way, sorry, one last thing.
Oh, sure.
You should do email by yourself, by the way. Email is not that hard, and you know your company the best, and you know your content the best. You might just want to like ask, and you guys can email me and ask me, and I'll give you like tips on best practices for email, and it's easy enough where you can probably do it yourself.
Nice. Final question: any B2C social or messaging apps growth hack recommendations?
It depends on what scale you want to do it. If you're trying to make tens of thousands of dollars, there's not really a good growth hack nowadays. I think messenger retargeting has been really, really cool, so you can try that. What we used to do in the good old days is join thousands of Facebook groups and spam them. It doesn't really work that well anymore. It's actually really hard to do nowadays. I think having like autoresponders is really good. So you'll see this on LinkedIn, but people do this on Facebook too, is you can set up a bot that says like, after you follow somebody on Instagram or after you add somebody on Facebook, if they add you back, then auto message them. So people do this on LinkedIn, where like they'll, LinkedIn request like a shitload of people, and then when they get accepted, they'll in-mail them, because in-mails are free. So that's one hack. That's one actually good hack for Instagram in general, where like if someone's gonna follow you, you should send them like a personalized message. But again, like these types of like B2C strategies are not very scalable. The problem with B2C is you just need so many customers for your business to be valuable, because typically your average order values are so small that hacking is like not great. It's okay for your first like maybe 50 or 100 customers, or even 100 or 200 customers. You just need to understand that that's going to be the case, and you need to find something else afterwards. But it could be like the difference between you raising like, your pre-seed or seed round or something like that. So in those cases, it's okay. That's why I always say like, just don't become a crack addict when it comes to like these types of growth hacks. So
awesome. Yeah. Shawn, thank you so much. As always, insightful, really appreciate it. I'm assuming that we'll be able to grab your deck and I can send it out to everyone.
Yep. Yeah, that sounds good.
Awesome. Perfect. Well, appreciate you being here. Thanks again.